December 16th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The snow fell in thick, heavy flakes that muffled sound and turned the world into a monochrome painting of white and shadow. Inside the cramped interior of an M4 Sherman tank, 24-year-old Lieutenant Sarah Mae Whitmore from Amarillo, Texas, pressed her face against the cold metal of the periscope, watching the forest road that stretched before them like a pale ribbon through the darkness of pine trees. The tank smelled of oil and sweat, and the bitter coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The radio crackled with static and occasional transmissions, most of them reporting the same thing. Heavy German activity, massive troop movements, attacks coming from unexpected directions. Something was wrong, fundamentally wrong, and every instinct Sarah had developed over 18 months of combat was screaming warnings that no one seemed to be hearing. She had started the war as Sarah Mae Robertson, a ranch girl who could ride before she could walk, and who had grown up helping her father repair tractors and trucks in the endless Texas grassland. When the war started, when the boys she'd gone to school began shipping out to Europe and the Pacific, she had tried to enlist. The recruiting officer had laughed at her, suggested she join the WCs if she wanted to serve, maybe become a nurse or a typist, something appropriate for a woman. Sarah had joined the WCs. She had also lied about her mechanical experience, downplaying her skills to get assigned to a motor pool in England. Once there, she had demonstrated an understanding of engines and mechanics that outstripped most of the men around her. She could diagnose problems by sound, could strip and rebuild transmissions, could keep temperamental vehicles running under conditions that would have defeated less determined mechanics. But Sarah hadn't crossed the Atlantic to fix trucks. She had come to fight. And in the chaos of the European theater, with casualty rates climbing and the need for trained personnel becoming desperate, rules that had seemed absolute began to bend. When a tank commander was killed in Normandy and his crew refused to accept a replacement they didn't know, Sarah had volunteered. She knew tanks, understood their mechanics better than most of the officers making decisions about them. The crew, desperate and grieving, had agreed to give her a chance. Now, here she was, fighting the coldest December in memory. Before we continue with what happened in those frozen forests, I want to take a moment to recognize something important. I know that our audience is made of intelligent and discerning people like you. People who understand that history's greatest innovations often came from those who refused to accept that something couldn't be done. If you value content that uncovers these untold stories of ingenuity and courage, I'd be deeply grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing these forgotten voices back to life. The Sherman tank Sarah commanded was nicknamed Amarillo Rose, painted on the turret in faded letters by her gunner, Corporal James Murphy from Brooklyn, who thought everything from Texas needed to be named after flowers or songs. The crew consisted of Murphy, driver Private Frank Chin from San Francisco, loader Private Eddie Walsh from Boston, and bow gunner Private Robert Bobby Jenkins from rural Georgia. They were an unlikely family, thrown together by war, bonded by combat, and initially skeptical of their female commander. That skepticism had faded during the brutal fighting across France. Sarah had proven herself not just competent but exceptional, with an ability to read terrain and anticipate enemy movements that kept them alive when other crews died. She understood that the Sherman was outgunned by German tanks, that its armor was thinner, that in a straight fight against a panther or a tiger they would lose. So she refused to fight fair. She used cover, used terrain, used surprise and maneuver to compensate for the Sherman's weaknesses. But her most controversial idea, the one that had earned her mockery from other tank commanders and skepticism from her superior officers, was her obsession with camouflage. Not the standard camouflage patterns, but adaptive camouflage, changing the tank's appearance based on terrain and season. In Normandy's hedgerows, she had woven branches and foliage into netting that broke up the Sherman's distinctive silhouette. Crossing France in autumn, she had used mud and vegetation to blend with the landscape. Now, in the dead of winter, she had done something that made other commanders laugh. She had covered the Amarillo Rose in white sheets secured with wire, transforming the olive-drab Sherman into a ghost that disappeared against the snow. Her fellow tank commanders thought it was silly, a waste of time and effort. They argued that tanks were meant to be seen, that their presence was part of their psychological impact, that trying to hide a 30-ton vehicle was pointless. Sarah's company commander, Captain Morrison, had told her directly that she was wasting her crew's time with arts and crafts projects when they should be maintaining their equipment and resting. Sarah had listened politely and continued anyway, because she understood something that the others seemed to miss. The Germans were better at tank warfare. Their panzers were superior machines. Their crews were experienced. Their tactics were refined. The only way American armor could compete was by using every possible advantage, and invisibility was the greatest advantage of all. On December 16th, when the German offensive began, when Operation Walk am Rhein erupted across the thinly defended American lines in the Ardennes, Sarah's obsession with camouflage became the difference between life and death. The initial German attack was massive and unexpected, catching American forces completely by surprise. Entire divisions were overrun, thousands of soldiers captured, carefully prepared defensive lines shattered by the sheer weight and speed of the assault. Sarah's tank platoon was positioned near a crossroads south of Saint-Vith, an unremarkable position that suddenly became crucial as German forces pushed westward. The orders came through confused and contradictory. Hold a position, fall back, reinforce the line, retreat to avoid encirclement. In the chaos, with radio communications breaking down and command structure dissolving, Sarah made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed in peacetime. She ignored the orders to retreat. She could see what the officers further back couldn't. The crossroads they were defending was a key to the entire sector. 3 roads met there, and whoever controlled would control the flow of German forces through this part of the Ardennes. If the Germans took it unopposed, they would have a clear route west, potentially cutting off American forces to the north. But if someone held it, even for a few hours, even at terrible cost, it might slow the German advance enough for reinforcements to arrive.